Hello everyone, and welcome to this month's edition of the Roundtable. Today for your reference is August 25th, and we're here on the campus of Elyria High School, and the school project is getting closer to completion here. There's lots of construction around us, and they seem to be getting closer. School starts in a couple of weeks, and this will be an exciting new addition to our community. So as you're watching, just as a reminder, probably come out and take a look and take a drive around Elyria High School. It's a wonderful campus here. I'm sure there'll be open houses in the months to come. So enjoy this new addition to our community. Hello, Andy, and welcome. And, we'll begin here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since our last show, when we talked largely about Cascade Park and the city's inability to take care of it, the possibility of a Metro Parks takeover has become a big part of the discussion. There will be a meeting August 30th, which is Tuesday, of the City Park Board to discuss Cascade, and Dan Martin, the Metro Parks Director, plans to attend. The Parks Board plans by September 8th to make a recommendation to City Council on what to do about Cascade. And I'm wondering, do you have any idea what that recommendation will be?
Well, I think we of course want to hear from the public who participates in the meeting August 30th to hear what feedback we hear from them. We had the meeting a couple of weeks ago on August 9th. And while there were a couple people that mentioned that they would very much like the city to retain ownership and so on, most of the rest of the room, of those 30 or so people that were in attendance, felt it would be a wise thing to turn the park over, its maintenance and operations over to the county Metro Parks if they are so interested. So I think we're likely to see more of that, but we'll see. We partly wanted to have the two meetings so that the public could see the sense in the direction from the first meeting to see if they want to affirm that or counter it in some way if there's a divergent opinion. But clearly the finances have not been there for us to maintain the park to the historic level of its maintenance. And the Metro Parks, if we can negotiate an arrangement and gain their participation, I think they can accelerate the maintenance and hopefully improvement of Cascade Park. It's our central main park of our community, and it warrants to be treated with special attention. You mentioned ownership. The Metro Parks has an arrangement with the City of Lorain under which it leases Lakeview Park. I think it's a long-term lease. Do you anticipate the city giving up ownership of Cascade Park, or perhaps only leasing it, or do you have in mind some sort of arrangement with the Metro Parks? I think it would likely be the baseline would be what the arrangement is between the City of Lorain and the Metro Parks with Lakeview Park, which is, in that case, it's a lease. I don't know if it's even $1 a year. It might be just for legal purposes. So nominal fee, a long-term lease. Theirs is a 50-year lease with a renewable period of additional 50 years. There's a window as that 50 years approaches for the city to consider otherwise not renewing. There's also 10-year increments along the 50 years where the city can evaluate whether they want to maintain the relationship, and can within a fairly narrow window, but I think a 30-day window leading into the completion of each 10-year period. The city can say we would want to bring back the operations and maintenance and management of the park. There's a provision that they have to reimburse the Metro Parks for the investment that they made during that period of time. So I would imagine we'll have some similar arrangement if we do this with the Lakeview Park agreement. Probably 50-year increments, maybe some review periods along the way.
The Metro Parks has some standards, I guess, or rules for becoming a participant with another community in a park project. One of them is that the park must be significant in the county. Dan Martin told us at the Chronicle that Cascade was easily one of the more significant parks of the county. In fact, he mentioned it in the Rose Garden, which is part of Lakeview Park, as the two most significant in Lorain County. But another of the rules or standards they have for becoming involved is that they feel it's appropriate for some city body to extend an invitation for them to begin the discussion process. There's been some talk about City Council possibly being the body that would extend that invitation, because under the city charter, it's the council, not the Parks Board, that has the authority to lease or sell any parkland. Do you anticipate council extending an invitation to the Metro Parks?
Well, I think should the meeting on the 30th be somewhat similar to the meeting on the 9th, I would expect that to be the case. And the path along the way has been that council does speak on behalf of the city, and given the special circumstances that I personally am within, in that I will be out of office at the end of the year. So there's that element to the discussion. But even if I were just reelected to another 4-year term, even still, it would require the city council. Council is the body that acts on behalf of the city. The mayor is the contracting officer, but within the limits that council legislation provides. So, and especially something of this magnitude, it clearly requires a councilmatic action as well as community input. And I think, having talked to a number of council members leading into this whole discussion, they felt it would be wise to have these public discussions to get some input from the public as to what the general mood of the community would be, to help give them some guidance as to making their decision. Largely this comes down to having financial resources. I mean, among the elements of the meeting on the 9th, August 9th, clearly those in attendance feel that this park is special and it warrants special attention. And even those that didn't necessarily encourage going with the Metro Parks, at minimum their comments had to do with wanting investment to take place in the park to maintain it and improve it, that was a clear desire of theirs. So recognizing that, the question from City Council's perspective is how best to meet that desire. And given our minimal means in recent years, many years, to maintain the park, and the fact that finances are likely to be more strained in the next several years than they have been in the last several, makes it even all the more difficult to maintain the park. And problems have been accelerated because of a lot of erosion that's taking place. And this has not just been over the last several years, although erosion measures have accelerated problems, but we discovered back in 1970, Mayor Reichlin at the time wrote a letter to City Council and the Parks Board at that time asking and suggesting that we make an arrangement to convey the park over to the Metro Parks. So that was on the heels of the floods in 1969, I believe that was. Right. So we had that event, but the Metro Parks, we would see what a deal, and then any deal that would be negotiated. Again, I think it would be very similar to what happened in Lorraine with Lakeview Park, would have to be confirmed by City Council. There's also the issue of raising funds, donations that you're aware of in Lorraine, that they raised, I think, $1.5 million, maybe closer to $2 million in private contributions. So that may be an element of this discussion as well.
Yes, as I recall, the Metro Parks requires some sort of contribution from the community, that is the public community, from the city. It can be the land itself, and the Metro Parks makes a matching contribution. But then there's also the obligation that the Metro Parks places on the community for private fundraising. And we discussed last time whether there would be people who could lead that kind of a fundraising project here in Elyria. Here in the 2010s, it's a difficult economic time. There aren't as many people who maybe are the leaders of big businesses. We've lost some, General Motors, for example. Do you anticipate finding someone who could lead such an effort? Do you have anybody in mind? Has anybody approached you saying, hey, that's something that I feel like I'm uniquely suited to take on?
No one has approached me and saying that they would like to chair or co-chair or participate in that effort. There are some meetings scheduled over the next number of days with likely prospects. I've had numerous conversations over the for 10 years really, but mostly over the last number of months, from people that I think could be drawn upon to help raise funds, who have said that they feel that the wise move would be to bring the Metro Parks into the equation. So I think part of this process, and if fundraising is to be part of the formula, I think there would probably be a heightened interest in the community among donors if the Metro Parks were at the table. So I think the first step would be for council to give this invitation. It'll be referred here at the next council meeting, which will be September 6th, the day after Labor Day will be the next council meeting. And then in that 2-week period between that and the next council meeting, and at the following council meeting would be the opportunity for council to pass a resolution of an invitation, so to speak, and then discussions would take place from there. So again, assuming the meeting on the 30th confirms what's the dialogue up to now, I would assume that invitation will take place and probably authorize the negotiation of an agreement, and then that agreement would have to be then confirmed by City Council at a time, down the road. And then during the conversation, it may also come up whether or not to have an agreement done before the end of the year or wait till next year in the new administration. And, so those are some subtle elements of a discussion that may take place over the next number of months. But I think also that any agreement is going to be very straightforward, and it ultimately is going to meet with the satisfaction, should it happen, with the Metro Park. So I'm not sure there's many variables there. I think the bigger decision is, should we do something or not? And again, I think as challenging as it has been for the city to maintain the park in recent years, it's going to be even all the more challenging in the next several years with the cuts from the governor and the state general assembly. They're cutting local government funds dramatically. We're anticipating having $640,000 less next year, and in 2013 being a little over $1 million less, $1.1 million. At the same time, in 2013, the estate tax will go away, and that's another $600,000 the city receives per year. So about 2 years from now, we will be down $1.7 million below, the cuts that we've sustained that have been dramatic here in the last couple of years. So our resources are scarce and dwindling, and such a partnership with the Metro Parks may be our only opportunity to manage the park. Some other things that, well, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask, you mentioned that you won't be around too much longer. One of two people will be your successor, Holly Brinda, a school board member, and Ray Noble, former chairman of the city Republican Party. Has either of them contacted you and said, I really like to be involved in this decision-making regarding Cascade, or have they basically left it to you and City Council to move the football?
Yeah, they've not reached out to me personally. However, Mrs. Brenda did attend that meeting on August 9th. So, she made some comments, some of which were quoted in the paper, and I don't recall any sentiment there suggesting any stay to the discussion or anything. She can weigh in and contact me individually, or come to the meeting on the 30th, or convey her views in any way. As a candidate, certainly that she's going to be one of the two possible people to be in office at the end of the year. Just
to note the popularity of Cascade Park, we reported today in the newspaper that Cascade had moved up to number 19 on a national list, the Coca-Cola's Live Positively contest. We're up there with some national and state parks, which have millions of votes, although Cascade has 48,000. So that's an indication, I think, of how important Cascade is to this community.
I think so, and I think it's nice to see the local community support for the park and getting on the website and so on. So that does show definite interest in the park. I might add a couple things that have been touched on a little bit. We've had a significant erosion problem at the East Falls that has compromised part of the decking of the waterfalls. So we have a structural engineer that's studying that right now to determine what the remedy is. So that's going on right now. You also reported at the west branch of the river, the bridge going over the west branch in front of the West Falls. We've had some problem with the embankment, so that with the abutment on one end of the bridge. So that's being studied right now as well to determine what the remedy will be of that. It appears that the remedy of each of those is going to be in the tens of thousands. They may approach 100,000. It's hard to know, and that's the subject of the analysis that's going on right now. So those are two areas that just really surfaced just in recent weeks. Both of those problems, and then there's other erosion problems in the rest of the park. So it's kind of a balancing act here between making the case that we've got a problem to address, and at the same time we're trying to put our best foot forward to hopefully interest the Metro Parks to take on this park. And so it's while it's a spectacular natural wonder and beautiful place, it has its challenges.
Speaking of the upcoming mayoral race, there was a decision by the Supreme Court yesterday to uphold a decision to keep Tim Quinn off the ballot. He was a would-be independent candidate. 4 years ago, he finished second in the fall mayoral race to you, maybe a little closer than you had anticipated, certainly closer than the Chronicle had anticipated. Yeah. With him off the ballot, do you think that, how do you see the race shaping up?
Well,
I should note that you're a Democrat.
Yes, that's the footnote there. Yeah, so we have the Democrat nominee, Holly Brenda, and then the Republican nominee, Ray Noble. You know, the headwinds, support or suggest that the Democrat is the clear favorite in the city of Elyria. So I think it starts there. As you referenced, 4 years ago, the independent candidate came pretty close to beating me at the time. So it's hard to say. I know this spring many incumbent mayors, Democrats, Republicans alike, lost their primary elections here. So this has been a difficult year or two on incumbents across the board, particularly mayors. So given that neither of those are incumbents, that takes that out of the equation. Again, I think the numbers suggest that the Democrat nominee is the favorite, and I don't think anything would be different here. So Mr. Noble's been involved in the community, and perhaps he can make a case, and time will tell.
Okay. Let's talk about another court decision. The 9th District Court of Appeals recently upheld a decision from Lorraine County Common Police Judge James Miraldi that concerned complaint from firefighters that they had been wrongly demoted in, I think it was October 2009. And the question was whether the demotions should take place within seniority for the whole department, or by seniority for the whole department, or by seniority within ranks. As I understand it, there was a stay put on that move pending the appeal. Can you explain what effect that's going to have now? Are firefighters going to be demoted? And if so, how? And do they need to be demoted at present, because we have fire departments working with a federal grant that's allowed the hiring of some extra firefighters? And the idea behind the demotion was that when there were fewer firefighters, there didn't need to be as many supervisors. And too many Indians, not enough, too many chiefs, not enough Indians kind of argument. Right. Where does that stand?
Well, to give a little background on this case, when we were going through those demotions and reducing the rank, and for the reasons you just described, to be proportionate to the rank and file members, the firefighters, it didn't matter to the city who was demoted in terms of whether preference was given to seniority within the department or the city as a whole. And depending on which was adhered to, meant different people were going to be demoted. It did not matter at all to the city or city administration. It was an arbitrary thing. It didn't matter. We just simply wanted to come down to the number. And in fact, because it did not matter to the city, we went to the union anticipating a challenge and went to them saying, hey, there's conflicting evidence both in the contract and state law and so on. There's an argument, a strong argument either way, on who had priority and seniority in this matter. So we went to the union before we made the move and said, which would you prefer? Which would you want us to act on? And they did not want to weigh in on that, because in fact, if they picked one side or the other, either way they would choose, some of their members would be viewed as being harmed. So they stayed out of it, and we anticipated a challenge whichever way we went. They would have grieved it and sued regardless of which way we went. And there was an argument to go either way. We clearly felt the preponderance of the information backed up the path we chose, but it really didn't matter to us. So we defended it because we felt it was the right decision based on the preponderance of the evidence available to us. The Common Pleas judge ruled against the city's decision in that regard, stay and so on, and now the appeal that was upheld that decision. We still have other remedies to challenge it still, but the ramifications are minimal in that we've had enough retirements in the time past that there are no longer any of the firefighters with the city any longer. So there's no changes to be made. All of those that were promoted have been promoted. So the issue is back pay. That's the issue at hand, is who gets paid some back pay for the positions they should have had according to the court opinion. So it's would not change who's in positions right now. It would only change who receives and how much back pay there might be paid out on behalf of the city toward individual firefighters.
Now, does the department have fewer supervisors at present than it used to? I mean, that was the issue, wasn't it?
Yes, we do. But what the issue was who they weren't contesting our ability to reduce the number of officers.
Okay.
It was who was going to be reduced.
Okay.
So and now, as I said, through retirements over these last 2 or 3 years since we took this action, the ones who were bumped from the positions have all come back into those positions because of the other retirements. Okay. So again, the issue right now is a question of back pay, how much and who might receive it. And we're not sure that we may not still challenge this. Again, we still believe the preponderance of the evidence. Now courts, of course, have said so far they disagree, and ultimately that's where it's determined.
Well, if the city is low on funds and anticipates being lower, and 2 courts have ruled against the city, would the city appeal further?
We might. I mean, there's minimal cost on our part. We handle it in-house with our law director's office. So our cost to litigate it is really, there is virtually no cost. An opportunity cost perhaps in terms of work they might do otherwise, but otherwise there's no cash outlay expense on behalf of the city. And the other part of it that's important to understand is that there's no clock ticking in terms of the longer we put off doing this, the more of a liability we accrue. We don't, because through the attrition, everyone else has now been promoted to the positions now.
Okay. The city has recently begun sending out new utility bills. Instead of a postcard, you get a letter.
Right.
Can you explain the reason for that and whether you've had any complaints or praise for it?
Yeah, we've had considerable number of praise for it, and some questions. People trying to understand exactly some of parts of the bill are in different places than they were, as you'd imagine, from a postcard to a letter. But it's been very positive. So there is additional information on the letter, and and we'll evolve. It will evolve over time based on the questions that people have. We'll make some adjustments. We ordered enough, I think, for 8 months more or less, and they can be reordered and make adjustments to that with the software and the printing of the base form to begin with. So it's been mostly positive. The only other questions have been just confusion, perhaps by some, but most it's been straightforward. But one of the other important elements of it is it gives us an avenue to also put newsletter and information flyers in the envelope with it. And one of the things we're working on right now is within our sanitation department, for example. We've been at this new sanitation program for, I think it's been about 9-10 months now. It's gone extremely well, but there still are some frequent problems that persist in terms of people putting the wrong materials in their recyclables and things like that. So we want to very soon put a flyer in there that clarifies and reminds people of the do's and don'ts, emphasizing common mistakes people are making, so to help improve that. So that's going to be an important thing to do. But the other thing that's going to follow up within the flyers here is pointing out to the public how helpful this new recycling program is and how helpful it is when people recycle. It's cut down our expenses by well over $200,000 a year in our landfill expenses by having people recycle. So as positive as that is and as much money as that is saving, there's still a relatively small percentage of our population that is participating in the recycling. We can do much better as a community. So we want to give some more information to help the public understand that this is not just a nice statement to do nice for the environment, although it clearly is, but it also helps save money on the fund, which will in turn help keep our rates in order. So, the more we can keep our costs down within the department, the more it'll keep the rates in order. So we hope explaining that to the public, they'll be more motivated to participate, and that will be distributed through those utility bills.
With just a few months left in your term now, what are the top 3 things you hope to get accomplished before you leave?
Well, good question. There's a number of things, and without any order, I can just think of some of the things we're working on trying to tighten up here. Among them is we've had old records that have been stored in 328 Broad Street, the previous City Hall location. So we've been making improvements to the Hilltop building, the old Hilltop, the Gulf Road School at the corner of Gulf Road and Hilltop. So that's nearly complete. And in terms of fixing the roof and new lighting, energy efficient lighting that's been paid for out of a grant, So we're about to migrate those records from 328 Broad Street over to the Hilltop building. So once that's complete and should be done over the next month or so, 328 Broad Street will be a fully expendable property for the next administration to decide what to do, whether to fix it up in some way, sell it as is, demolish it, any number of those things. So we want to turn that over in a position to move forward on. You know, let's see, some of the other things we have, actually,
Cascade certainly is one.
Cascade is certainly one, yeah, thank you. There's some adjustments within the sanitation department, as I mentioned. We'd like to tighten that up a little bit. Yeah, I'm trying to think. We have some contracts that are being negotiated right now. I think all the contracts will probably be completed here. AFSCME was just completed here a week or so ago. Actually, it'll be signed here in the next week, effective September 1st. Firefighters contract should be finished here in the next few weeks, we hope. A conciliator person will tell us exactly what the arrangement is. So we hope to have the union contracts all completed here. There are a number of things that are escaping me, and perhaps that'll be the subject. We're out of time, I'm told, so perhaps we can make that a part of the next month's roundtable. So given we're out of time, the school's about to begin. Happy fall to everybody. Good luck to our students in Elyria that they are off to a good start with the new school year. So until next month, goodbye.